Formula 1 circus has rocked up to Japan for the Japanese Grand Prix, but we're going to be looking at Noah, James and Mason Wood. Now, if you've been following the story, of course, Noah, James and Mason Wood have been involved in a data scandal in which both of the drivers were exchanging information regarding each of their teams, being Ford and also Red Bull. We can now confirm that both Noah, James and Mason Wood will be appearing in court on November the 17th. The former US drivers are set to appear at the Court of Arbitration for Sport over their data scandal. Mason Wood has thanked his fans for their support as he looks to try and fight hard to prove his innocence within this entire case. As all the evidence starts to stack up, Mason Wood has definitely been playing the victim role, stating that he was blackmailed by Noah James into participating in all of these scandals due to apparently Noah James giving Mason Wood money in which he decided not to reclaim. Now, both Christian Horner and Ewan Wright will be taking part in this court case and giving their statements. Of course, team principal Christian Horner from Red Bull and team principal Ewan Wright for Ford will both be providing their statements, as of course they were heavily involved in the discovery of this data scandal. And the police investigation is still ongoing with regards to the break-in into the Ford team factory. Despite the fact that the majority of this case is centered around the Court of Arbitration for Sport, there is still a police investigation going on due to the breaking and entry that Noah and Mason participated in when entering the Ford team factory. So there is still that to look at as well, but by the looks of things, with the Court of Arbitration for Sport being during the winter break and also with the police investigation still ongoing, whether we'll find out any news about it during the in-season that we have at the moment, we're not sure. Looks like we'll be heading into the off-season to find out what eventually happens in this story. Taking a look at the race news then, heading into the Japanese Grand Prix, it was Audi that fired the first shots in this weekend with the fastest time in FP2 and also in FP3, with McLaren setting the pace with Ricciardo in FP1. But two drivers that were keeping close, especially with Audi through FP2 and FP3, was Sam in the Jaguar and Reese in the second McLaren. They were keeping very honest with Audi's strong pace, and they look to be the biggest threat heading into this weekend. A team that's not looking to be much of a threat is Ferrari. They're both struggling to get their car to work around this circuit. Sainz seems to be getting the better of the Ferrari compared to Tom, as Tom seriously struggles to get the car balanced enough, especially in the first sector. Renault and Mercedes are neck and neck in qualifying trim and race performance, and that's going to bode well for them as they're going to be fighting for the lower end of the points heading into this race. But there is the race news. Audi looks like they're on top. Will they convert that into victory? Let's find out. It's time for the Japanese Grand Prix. Hey, how's it going, guys? It is Foxydude here. Welcome back to a brand new video for you guys today here on the channel, and for another episode of the F1 journey for you guys today here on the channel. If you end up enjoying today's video, feel free to drop it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well, as there are still over 60% of you that are not yet subscribed to the channel, and it would be awesome if you can help us out. As you can see that we're here for the Japanese Grand Prix. We've got 2 races to go. There are still 5 drivers that are in contention to win the Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship. So we've got our work cut out. We've got a decent advantage heading into this race, but this is the Japanese Grand Prix. It is my weakest track on the calendar, and I'm not expecting much, but we'll give it our best shot. Onto our first qualifying lap, we knock over the bollards because sod them. And as we go now towards the start-finish line here, we cross the line and it's P8. Pretty much showcasing that we are on the back foot heading into this weekend, and we're going to really have to pull out all of the stops in order to get our best flying lap in. And as you can see on our final qualifying lap now, we're about 0.2 of a second up on our previous best lap time. So let's see where this puts us now. So we take the short run towards the start-finish line. We cross it now. Where's that lap time going to put us on the grid? It's going to only be good enough for P7. It's race time here for round number 16 of the F1 journey, season number 7. We are here for the Japanese Grand Prix, and the title race is really heating up. There are 5 drivers that are still in contention to win the Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship. Will we see any of the title protagonists bow out of their championship race after this Grand Prix? We'll just have to find out. The 3.608 mile circuit is the only figure of 8 circuit that we have on the F1 calendar, and it should be very, very interesting to see who comes out on top today, with plenty of places to make your overtake stick either into 130R, the Casio Triangle, or down into turn 1 with the assistance of the DRS. Soft, medium and the hard compound tyres are what we're going to be using for this Grand Prix. Don't expect to see any of the wet weather tyres being needed, as there is no rain forecasted for this race, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see who comes out on top. So let's have a look at the grid then and see where everybody lines up. It's Sam then that's going to be on pole position for the first time this season, actually. He starts on pole with Daniel Ricciardo alongside of him on the front row of the grid. Reese starts in third for the second McLaren driver with Carlos Sainz in P4 for Ferrari. George Russell and Charles Leclerc are next, 5th and 6th. Crucially, Russell in front of Leclerc, that's not what Charles will want. We're starting the race in P7. Sebastian Vettel is then in P8 ahead of Lando Norris in the Jaguar. Difficult qualifying session for him, with Lewis Hamilton lounging down in 10th place. It's the two Renaults then of Esteban Ocon and Valtteri Bottas lining up 11th and 12th on the grid, with Stoffel Van Dorn P13 and Pierre Gasly in P14 for the Ford car. 15th place is Nick De Vries ahead of Callum Ilott in 16th place. Next up then, it's going to be Sergio Perez in P17 for the next Aston Martin car, with Nico Hulkenberg in P18 for Porsche. Then it's Yuki Tsunoda in P19 at his home Grand Prix, and then Pascal Wehrlein starts from the back of the grid. So here we are then, we're just about set for the Japanese Grand Prix, so it's going to be a one-stop strategy. It's the soft to the hard compound tyres. It's quite a normal strategy for the game. And as you can see then, let's get this race underway then. Here we are on the grid now for this race. We've got 5 red lights for the Japanese Grand Prix, and the 5 lights are out and we can get racing here in Japan. It's lights out and away we go. Good start for us off the line there. Sainz getting an awful start. Our teammate in the Ferrari there in towards turn 1. Now as we go around the outside of turn 1 here, Sainz just fends us off and goes around the inside there. Vettel now fancies a run here through the S corners, and as you can see, Vettel gets through. Ocon now fancying a run. So after a promising start, it's going a little bit sideways here, but we eventually get through ahead of Ocon, but we drop down to 8th place in this race as we press onwards now. It looks like Sam leads this Grand Prix as we go into the first of the Degners, clipping it through, but we've clipped the wheel onto the gravel. We go sideways through the second Degner into the barrier, making slight contact. We're now down to last place in this Japanese Grand Prix. It's an awful start to our Grand Prix. It's a very similar incident to what we had at the Italian Grand Prix. If you remember, I think that's 2 races ago when we dipped a wheel into the gravel and went careering into the barriers. We've done the same thing here, but we've dipped a wheel into the gravel this time around. And luckily, we were able to survive and not take any damage. But crucially, the damage has already been done because we're now right at the back of the field and at a track which I really just do not get on with at all. It's made our race so much harder now, and it's something that we're going to have to try and address here. So let's just try and crack on with it. In towards 130R we go, and now making our way down in towards the final chicane here. We can see that Sam leads this Grand Prix with the 2 McLarens hunting him down at the start of this Grand Prix. But as you can see, let's try and get our recovery back underway here with Pascal Wehrlein and Yuki Tsunoda making their way towards turn 1 here as we now try and fly through, making a very nice run there. As Tsunoda locks up, he goes into the side of us. We've damaged our front wing end plate. Front wing is off. We've made a collision with Yuki Tsunoda into the first corner, and what was already going to be a really difficult race after a key mistake gets even worse with front wing damage. We're going to have a look though at the race start before we find out what happened with ourselves. As the lights go out, it was a brilliant start actually for Reese in second place. Gets the jump on Ricciardo straight away in towards the first corner. Sam leads the race, the 2 Audis going side by side, but we get hung out to dry a little bit by Carlos Sainz. Vettel then says thank you very much, I'll have that position, and gets it off as Ocon starting on the medium compound tyres there. Tries to have a run, but we've got more grip on the soft compound tyres. This is on board with Sainz here. This was a bad start from Sainz. He just did not get away at all. Both Leclerc and Russell absolutely pounced on that one. And as they fly now in towards turn 1, you can see we're on the outside here. Initially we've got the position, but we just carried too much speed into there. Didn't quite make the apex, and it just didn't work out for us in that situation. And this is on board with Reese now, of course, starting in third place behind his teammate Ricciardo. Not for much longer. That's an excellent launch off the start-finish line there. Sam instantly covering off Reese into turn 1, taking the inside line. Ricciardo's still there versus Reese, but this time around, Reese gets ahead of him, and in towards the S as he goes. He can now hunt down Sam as they blast their way on through. Now, this is on board and finding out what happened to us. Look how close we got to making contact there with Vettel, but this was the first incident that we had here where we just went wide on the exit of the first Degner. You can see here, as we make our way through, we just needed to turn in more. We just went too wide on there, took too much speed as well, and obviously with the cold tyres, we didn't have the grip there immediately, and yeah, we were just going too fast. We should have just lifted off slightly, and we would have been absolutely fine. This is the second incident now, and this is with Yuki Tsunoda on the pitch straight here. So as we were going down towards turn 1 here, Tsunoda's actually on the inside line, and at this point it's alright, but he then turns into our line there, and then locks up, and we smash our front wing. So I don't know if you can say it's a racing incident or whatnot, but no matter what, it's absolutely ruined our Grand Prix. No virtual safety car, no safety car. We're already now 10 seconds back, and we've got to pit for a new front wing. At the track, in which this is my weakest circuit, as I've already mentioned about 10 times. So, theoretically, I don't even know what I can get out of this Grand Prix. We're just going to get onto a set of medium compound tyres. We do have to stop again. I could have gone to the hards all the way to the end. But it just would have meant the tyre wear would have just been really bad at the end. And I kind of had it in my mind that, you know, the undercut is so powerful on with this mod that I felt like maybe if I then went on to, you know, another set of mediums later on in the race when everyone's on their hard tyres, I might be much quicker, and it would sort of limit the damage. But unfortunately, the damage has been done. Like I said, in my personal opinion, I thought Tsunoda just turned into my line and locked up in doing so, and it forced me to run into the back of him because I had nowhere to go. But yeah, you can let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of that incident. But back with the race action then. Unfortunately, there's not really going to be much action with me as I'm over half a minute behind the field. So I'm now going to let you guys watch some of this lot then. So we've got Daniel Ricciardo in third place here, under pressure from one of the Audis of Russell now, heading in towards turn 1. Ricciardo going backwards in this Grand Prix. Russell around the outside of the first corner here. Let's see if we can make this one stick now. As he gets towards the S's now, Russell should be ahead, and he is. So George Russell up into third place. It's Charles Leclerc, though, crucially, that's the main championship contender. Russell isn't in contention to win the championship this season. So for Charles Leclerc's sake, you might be getting a bit frustrated about that one. As we now go through in towards turn 1 here, Ocon and Vettel fighting away. Ocon raising his hand there a little bit, getting a bit annoyed with what Vettel is up to in his defensive driving, but Ocon will hold it in there as they continue to swoop their way through, but Esteban has to back out of it, and unfortunately for him, he has to wait a little bit longer, but Vettel can carry on his way, but now Ocon will have to wait for another opportunity to get that attack, but unfortunately it's going to have to turn into defense. Here comes Norris now through 130R, and he makes that move stick on Esteban Ocon, and he can break nicely into the Castillo triangle, and he is through, and now he is ahead, and he can get off to Vettel, and honestly, he's going to have DRS in the straight. The Jaguar is the fastest car in a straight line. Remember, they had that engine upgrade back at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and they'll use that to good effect here. Vettel, a sitting duck on the straight to Lando Norris, who flies past, and his drive starting to improve as he started a little bit further down the order in this Grand Prix, but he's making his way up the field, and now he can set his sights on my teammate Carlos Sainz. Back on board with the Renault of Ocon, and also the Mercedes of Vettel, Hamilton, and Bottas have joined the fight here now as they try and make their way through towards turn 1. Let's see if Ocon can go for it. Goes to the inside line. Vettel defends the outside line. Through they go then towards turn 1. Ocon can shove Vettel wide here. Vettel will try and hold on though as much as he can. Through the S's they go now. Ocon should have the high ground through all of this as they go now through the second part of the S's. They're still side by side here as they go through now these final parts of the S's. And fair play to Sebastian Vettel. He holds it on versus Ocon. Hamilton now through towards Degner 1. Fancies a run on Ocon. Ocon's going to have a tight line into Degner 1, but it's enough to stay ahead of Hamilton. That's great racing between the pair of them. Now, of course, a couple of laps ago, we saw that George Russell got past Daniel Ricciardo. Now Leclerc wants to get past Ricciardo as they make their way up towards 130R, and now breaking through, well, not really breaking, still going flat out through there. It is a move done and dusted for Charles Leclerc. Ricciardo going down the order a little bit, so I wonder if the McLaren is struggling for race pace. That means that the two Audi cars could end up catching Reese up ahead. Further into the Grand Prix now, this is when the front runners have made their one and only stop. So I think this is about lap 9 or lap 10 here. We're on board with Sam, who's trying to fight Stoffel Van Dorn in the Red Bull now as they go on to the start-finish straight here. Van Dorn holding him off as long as he can, but unfortunately, as they now blast down the start-finish straight, Sam will say, I'm bored of this, and just absolutely breeze past. And you just saw there in the background, Reese is still in the mix. So Reese is currently still in second place. Sam still leads this Grand Prix. On board here now with Carlos Sainz, my teammate, trying to carry the flag for Ferrari, and unfortunately it's not going to work out as he is on the hard compound tyres. Norris ahead on the medium compound tyres, swoops around the outside, and he is now through ahead of my teammate Sainz. And now we're going to go back on board here with the Mercedes and the Renault scrap, but this time Mercedes now pulling away from the two Renaults as Hamilton goes down the inside of Vettel in towards 130R and in towards the chicane. Vettel will try and fight fight this one as long as he can here. Hamilton, though, will take the second part of the chicane to himself, get the high ground, and get in front of Sebastian Vettel. And before you guys start commenting, yes, there are 2 DRS zones on this circuit. You can see on your screens right there as we close the DRS in towards 130R, there is a DRS zone that's been placed into there. So there are 2 DRS zones around here, not 1. Lap 13 of the Grand Prix, though, we are now coming in for our second stop of the race. We did get in front of Yuki Tsunoda, but of course that's because he pitted. So you can kind of see how much time that we have been gaining, but obviously, like I said, the fact that we're not getting a safety car, we're not getting anything, we're just having to use our pure pace, and it's just not enough. But we're in now for another set of mediums, and hopefully with this pit stop, now that our tyres will be a lot fresher than the guys ahead, we can really close them down and start carving our way from the order. But it's going to be a long trek to get into the points. As we go onto the start-finish straight here, I believe the Renaults and the Mercedes cars that are currently going through the hairpin at the moment are the drivers that are currently situating the final points paying position. So we've got such a long distance to try and cover, but we're obviously going to give it our best shot. But someone who's also giving it his best shot is Hulkenberg. He's trying to attack, I think that's Nick de Vries in the Aston Martin, as to go down the inside here into the last chicane. This is a very tight ordeal between the pair of them now. I think it's actually Sergio Perez in the Aston Martin. It is Sergio Perez. I got it wrong. It's not Nick de Vries. Now we've got another scrap behind though, because Pascal Wehrlein here is overtaking one of the Red Bulls of Stoffel Van Dorn. Now Wehrlein fancies a run down the inside into turn 1 on the Sergio Perez, and he does do it there. So fair play to Pascal Wehrlein. A nice double overtake there. Hulkenberg maintains position. Wehrlein gets ahead. Now we've got a little bit of an inter-team scrap here. The 2 Ford drivers, Pierre Gasly and Callum Ilott, going side by side here. Ilott's got DRS. Ilott passes Gasly, and ahead as Ford a battle for mirror positions really in this Grand Prix. And the rivalry between Mercedes and Renault in this race continues as Hamilton now is attacking Esteban Ocon as they go in towards turn 1. Hamilton gets the inside line. That's the side that he wants as they go in towards turn 1 now. Ocon versus Lewis Hamilton. Who's going to come out on top? Lewis Hamilton gets out on top versus Esteban Ocon. He is through. Ocon will fight this one though through the S's. He might just have the upper hand like Vettel did when he attacked him through the S's, but it's not to be. As you can see, Hamilton flies on through and he is now ahead of Esteban Ocon. Vettel will fancy a little bit of a run if he can, and Ocon now will try and come back at Lewis Hamilton here as they go now onto the start finish straight. Hamilton will have to defend the inside line. He doesn't do it. It's actually Vettel that we're looking at here. That's not Lewis Hamilton. That is Vettel. So I missed when Vettel overtook Ocon there. My mistake. Hamilton's absolutely flown away. Jesus. Now he's left Vettel to fight against both the Renault drivers. Let's see if he's got the high ground through the S sections. He does so. Vettel stays in front of the 2 Renaults now. Lap 22 of the Grand Prix, and we're still giving it everything we've got, despite the fact that we're really far down the order, and we're back onto Yuki Tsunoda after our crash on the first lap. And this time around, Yuki Tsunoda goes to the outside line. We're going to go to the inside line, and we're actually going to make this move stick. And we are through past Yuki, and we're now up into 19th place. No longer stone dead last, but as you can see, it's not enough. The final lap of the Grand Prix is done, and yeah, unfortunately it's going to be an absolute disaster for us here at Suzuka. We crossed the start-finish line, and it's only going to be good enough for 19th place. P19, that's all I could achieve. I mean, like I said, it was my mistake in the first place to spin off into the first Degner. That was all my fault. I just didn't turn in enough. I anticipated more grip for my car, and I took too much speed into there, which is my own fault. But like I said, the incident with Yuki Tsunoda, I honestly thought that was Tsunoda's fault. Yeah, when we had to do a whole lap with half a front wing and then pit for a new one, we were always on the back foot, and I just simply couldn't catch up in time. I just didn't have enough. If it was a 100% race, I still don't know if I would have got any points there. So it's a disaster for us, but it's a great race for Sam in the Jaguar. He wins the Japanese Grand Prix. Reese comes across the line to finish in second for McLaren. He finished 2.6 seconds behind in the end. George Russell gets a podium for Audi and also got the fastest lap actually with 1:17.549. Reese and Sam ahead were constantly trading fastest laps, but in the end, it was actually Russell that got the fastest lap. That's probably going to annoy Charles Leclerc though. Leclerc finishes in P4. If Audi actually swapped and did team orders, it would have given Leclerc 3 crucial points in the championship battle, but it wasn't to be. Lando Norris recovers to finish in 5th place and beats Daniel Ricciardo in 6th for McLaren. My teammate Sainz could only get P7 here today. Lewis Hamilton in 8th place ahead of Sebastian Vettel in P9, and Valtteri Bottas came across the line in P10. So after that Mercedes-Renault duel that we saw plenty of in this race, it was Mercedes that came out on top and Renault ended up falling behind. And like I said before, George Russell claimed the fastest lap of the race. The second half of the table, you can see that Esteban Ocon finishing in 11th place ahead of Pierre Gasly and then Callum Ilott. So despite Ilott getting in front of Gasly, Gasly got him back. De Vries finished in 14th ahead of Hulkenberg in P15. Sergio Perez was 16th for Aston Martin. Pascal Wehrlein was 17th for the Porsche car. Then it was Stoffel Van Dorn in 18th place. We only came across the line in P19, and then Yuki Tsunoda rounded off the 20 drivers for Red Bull. No one actually DNF'd from the Grand Prix, but there is that. But crucially now, let's go and have a look at the Drivers' Championship and see how that has changed now, heading into the final race at the Belgian Grand Prix. And here it is then. We are currently top of the Drivers' Championship still with 216 points. Reese is now second in the championship and he is now 6 points behind. If Reese is to win the World Drivers' Championship, he has to beat me by more than 6 points, because I think I've checked the count back and we've got the same amount of wins. So currently I've got 3 race victories. Reese has got 2. So he needs to win to mitigate that count back. We've both got the same amount of second places, but I'm pretty sure that I've got more third places than Reese. So on count back, I would win. He's got to beat me by 6 points at the Belgian Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc's championship permutations. He is currently 9 points back in the championship. So it's quite simple. If Charles Leclerc won the Belgian Grand Prix and I finished in third place, Charles Leclerc would become world champion. Next up then is it's Daniel Ricciardo in P4. He's also in with a shout of the World Drivers' Championship. He is 20 points behind, which is a lot to do for him. And he basically needs me to have another nightmare Grand Prix at Belgium in order to win at the World Drivers' Championship. If he won that championship, I would have to finish in 8th place or lower for him to win the championship. And then finally, Sam, with that victory for Sam, and with me not scoring any points, Sam still maintains his championship aspirations on 194 points. He can still win it. He is 22 points behind. If Sam wins that Grand Prix, I have to finish in 9th place or lower in order for Sam to become world champion. So despite all of the crazy actions we've had this entire season, 5 drivers can still win this Formula 1 World Championship. Lando Norris is 6th in the championship on 113 points. Lewis Hamilton is 7th on 99 points. Carlos Sainz is on 87 points, just 1 point clear now of George Russell in 9th place in the championship. And Vettel maintains his position as 10th in the championship. The next race is the Formula 1 Belgian Grand Prix, where all of us 5 drivers will go for the title. The Constructors' Championship, though, is wrapped up. McLaren are your Constructors' Champions for season number 7. They're on 406 points. They have been the class of the field this season. They've won 5 races, and crucially, both Daniel Ricciardo and Reese have been putting in some sensational performances this season, and they're worthy Constructors' Champions. Jaguar moved back up into 2nd in the Constructors' Championship now on 307 points. Ferrari dropped behind them now on 303 points thanks to my poor race here today. Audi closed the gap to just 10 points now, and still 2nd in the Constructors' Championship is wide open. Mercedes are 5th in the championship on 147 points, with Renault on 49 points. Red Bull are on 38 points. Porsche are on 34 points. Ford are on 32, and then Aston Martin are down there on 20 points. But that is it for this Japanese Grand Prix. Let's go and have a look at the post-race notebook and see how the teams and drivers are feeling after this race heading into the finale. Taking a look at the post-race notebook, and Sam's victory meant that his title hopes remain alive thanks to Tom failing to score points, and he claims another race victory this season. It's back-to-back race wins now for Sam and for Jaguar, and with Tom failing to score points, it means that 5 drivers will go head-to-head for the title at the final race in Belgium. Sam admits that despite race victory number 2 in a row, his title chances are still slim as he remains 22 points back in the championship, meaning Tom needs to have yet another nightmare Grand Prix for him to win the championship, and he has to win the race in order to claim the title. He believes that it's very, very difficult, but he'll give it everything he's got. Reese has said that he is ready to give it everything to beat Tom and to claim his first World Championship. Reese is the closest man in the championship to Tom. He is 6 points behind in the title race, and it's all going to get very, very close. And Tom has apologised to his team for an awful Grand Prix, but he has still had an opportunity to call out Yuki Tsunoda, stating that the Red Bull driver needs to make sure that he learns how to use his mirrors more often, as Tom believes that Tsunoda was very much at fault for their crash at the first corner. Despite that, though, Tom says that's not an excuse for what was already his mistake, leading to the spin meant he had to start from the back and try and fight his way through. But despite that, for us Formula 1 fans, it bodes very, very nicely, as the final race of the season means we have got 5 drivers separated by just 22 points, meaning that all of them have a chance of winning the Formula 1 World Championship next time out in Spa-Francorchamps for the Belgian Grand Prix. Join us for the finale, where it will either be Tom, Reese, Leclerc, Sam or Daniel Ricciardo that will walk away from that Grand Prix as Formula 1 World Champion.